What's up, everybody? This is your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga, here to bring you another video with no frills, just the analysis. And today I'm here to bring you the review of Hunter x Hunter episode 116 entitled Revenge and Recovery. Alright, so first things first. A lot of people have been asking me if I'm going to be doing these reviews on a weekly basis. And my response, maybe, maybe not. I'm certainly going to attempt to make this consistent. Since I've already been on a 10-month. Yeah, damn, it's been a long time. 10-month hiatus. So the plan is to do this consistently every week, but I make no promises. Now on to the summary and analysis of this episode. So this was another slow episode in terms of plot, but there was a lot of content in this episode. So this actually turned out to be a pretty good episode. Basically, the only thing that happened is that Gon and Killua realized that they can't fight Pido because she's busy healing Komugi. So their plans get dashed. And Gon is really pissed off, to say the least. Just to briefly touch on Gon's rage. He's on the precipice of madness right now. He's right at that point where anger turns into rage and rage turns into flat out madness. And at this point, he's so angry. I mean, not even angry. I won't even use that word anymore. He's so enraged at this point that he doesn't even have the ability to properly assess the situation. And thank goodness for Killua, because if Killua wasn't there, this whole situation would have gone to hell pretty quickly. It's pretty clear that if Killua wasn't there, Gon would have attacked Pido regardless of Komugi. He just wouldn't have given a shit. So at this point in the story arc, Killua's symbolic function is just to be Gon's brain, to be his moral compass, to be his conscience. So yeah, for all you Freudians, Killua plays the position of sort of Gon's super ego, if that makes sense, because he's the one holding Gon in check, holding his base instincts, his id, if you will, in check. And also, again, this whole arc is really quite ingenious, and I'll be explaining why that is for the rest of this episode review. So first we have to start with, again, going back to the theme I raised in my previous episode review when I talked about how we're confronted with this disturbing juxtaposition and sort of similarity and contrast between humans and chimera ants. And Gon and Killua in this episode, well, maybe not Killua, but Gon is certainly going after Pido in this episode, or at least he's attempting to, and every time he's stopped by Killua or stopped by Pido. And at one point, Gon is moving forward towards Pido, is about to attack Pido, is about to strike, and Pido reacts by protecting Komugi. And Killua is realizing or trying to figure out what's going on. Why is Pido acting this way? Why is she look like she's protecting, or he, I don't even know what Pido is, he or she, whatever, is protecting Komugi. And then he says she looks like a mother who's trying to protect someone, protect one of her young, or something like that. And then he immediately dismisses the idea. He says, but that's ridiculous. Chimera ants don't act like that. That's not how they act. The implication being that they're crazy, they're psychopaths, they're genocidal, they're homicidal, they're maniacs. And from a certain standpoint, this makes sense. I mean, especially from Killua's standpoint and the standpoint of the other humans in the Chimera Ant arc, especially the ones who are a part of that nation who are about to be sacrificed in the, what's that ceremony called? The transformation or the selection. That's what it's called. Certainly from their standpoint, it looks like the Chimera Ants are all just sociopathic, psychopathic, homicidal, genocidal maniacs. But Imagine this situation. Imagine if it's 1922 and aliens visit our planet and they want to study us. They're doing anthropology, sociology, and they say, let's study this species of intelligent apes, because that's what we are. Primates, apes, great apes, specifically. Let's study them to see if we should make contact with them. It's 1922. What's just happened? We've just had the First World War. And let's say they want to study us for 30 years. Let's say they want to study us from 1922 to 1952. What's happening? We just had one world war. There's about to be another world war in a couple of decades that was born right out of the aftermath of the First World War. And what do we have in the Second World War? And leading up to the Second World War? The rise of Japanese imperialism, the rise of Nazism, the rise of Joseph Stalin to power in Russia, and the biggest war the world has ever seen. And we're not talking about some piss poor conflict. I think a lot of people don't really understand the magnitude of World War II and its global ramifications and implications. We're talking about where essentially the entire human planet is in a state of total war. We're not talking about regular war. Because right now, America is in war. We're in war in Afghanistan against the Taliban. We were at war against Iraq and some insurgents, and we're supposedly in a global war on terrorism. But it's not total war, because the life of American civilians are not impacted in the least bit by these ventures overseas, by these wars overseas. You can still go to the store. You can get any amount of food you want, pretty much. You can buy a new TV, new car. But during World War II, we're talking about total war. Total war is what happens when all of the resources of a country is devoted to waging war. So we're talking about total war. Now, we're already talking about a situation in which war affects every aspect of civil society, not just the government, but of civil society. But what was the magnitude of World War II? How many people were killed? And most people don't realize how many people were actually killed in World War II. The estimates put it at somewhere around 60 million people. So if you take all the people killed in the Holocaust, all the combatants killed in the war, and not just the combatants, but the civilians, because remember, we were bombing civilian population centers because that's where the manufacturing centers were. So we weren't just killing enemy combatants. We were bombing population centers. The atomic bombs that were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they were dropped on cities. We're talking about entire cities being wiped out. And this is just the number of people who died, 60 million. That's not even the number of people who were injured or who died as an aftermath of the war. We're just talking about people who died in the war, not the people who were even injured. That's 60 million people. And to add on to that, think about all the people that Joseph Stalin killed in Russia by himself. That's an additional 20 million people, at least. So you're talking about 80 million people who died in a global total war. That's more than 2.5% of the entire human population at that time that died just in World War II. That's a ridiculous number. That's like almost one in every 30 people on the face of the earth were killed. That's a ridiculous number. Now imagine if aliens were studying us at that point in human history and saw what we were doing to each other. From their perspective, we would be psychopaths. We would be sociopaths. We would be genocidal maniacs. That's a rather disturbing thought. So our alien visitors would be in the same position relative to us that Kahlua is in relative to the Chimera ants. They would think that we are crazy just like Kahlua thinks that the Chimera ants are crazy. And this is where Meryem's characterization comes into play. This is why Togashi is really a genius for writing this arc the way he did. We're at a point in time where Meryem is in an important transitional period in his characterization. His character transformation is really the focal point. It's really the nexus of this entire arc. Because we're getting to witness his burgeoning self-consciousness, if you will. His change from a genocidal psychopath into something, if not moral and ethical, at least something a little bit more. At least something a little bit better. Because he's starting to realize what love is. He's starting to realize that social relationships are necessary for self-identity. That's what Meryem is starting to realize. And how long did it take humanity to realize this fact? I mean, we throw around phrases like global citizens so easily, like as if that phrase was a part of the lexicon of humanity since the beginning of time. It's not. The idea of global citizenship, the idea of the UN, of an international body that's devoted specifically to stopping conflicts between other nations and within nations, even the concept of human rights, those are relatively recent in humanity. We're talking about the concept of human rights doesn't even go back in its modern form. Of course, there have been human rights for specific groups of people, like white males, like property owners. But human rights in its modern incarnation is relatively recent. It's extremely recent. We're talking about the UN wasn't even created until after World War II. So this whole struggle that Meryem is going through right now to come to his own self-identity, to recognize that other people are necessary for his own well-being, to understand what it means to love someone, to sacrifice something for someone else, to realize that there's something bigger than oneself. That whole transformation has been compressed. The transformation that it took humanity thousands of years to go through, and which still isn't complete to this day, is being compressed into one transformation in the character of Meryem. That's what the shogi board symbolizes. That's why the shogi board is so important in this arc. It symbolizes the ability to create relationships with other people. It's the most powerful symbolism in the entire manga. It represents the truth that self-consciousness is a function of your relationship with other people. That self-consciousness is realizing that other people are a precondition for your self-consciousness. Not the negation of self-consciousness. And that seems like a paradox, but it's absolutely true. Other people aren't obstacles to your self-actualization, to your freedom. They're necessary for your freedom. They're absolutely necessary. And that's sort of the whole philosophical message that's been compressed into the character transformation of Meryem throughout this entire arc. Also, before I end this video, I want to talk about one more thing. I want to talk about this idea of mercy, or at least some variation of mercy has been shown in this episode. So, at first I was a little confused. Like I said, I hadn't read the manga in a very long time. I hadn't watched the anime in a very long time. And I was confused by something that seemed to be a little bit inconsistent. When Gon actually finally sat down and said, okay, I'll give you an hour to heal Komugi. And I was thinking to myself, why should Gon show Pito mercy? Why should he do that? Why would Killua persuade Gon to wait and to show Pito mercy? After all, this is a war for the future of humanity, in a sense. This is a war that humanity can't afford to lose to the Chimera ants, because if they do, then they're all going to die pretty much. If your enemy is in a vulnerable position, then that would seem to be the best time to strike. That's just basic art of war. When your enemy is weak, attack. And don't stop attacking. So why should Gon be persuaded by Pito's supplication? And it took me a couple of minutes to realize this, but Gon's goal, and even Kalua's goal, is not to defeat the Chimera ants. It's to get Kite back. That's their whole goal. If they really wanted to defeat the Chimera ants, then they should have attacked Pito. Immediately they should have attacked Pito, but they didn't, because they need Pito in order to get Kite back. And this led me to another realization. Gon and Kalua are not real soldiers. And they shouldn't have been part of this mission. Because this mission is about defeating the Chimera ants. It's not about getting Kite back. It's not what this mission is supposed to be about. So basically, Gon and Kalua are pretty much lying to everybody. They're risking everybody else's life because they're not on board with what they're supposed to be doing, which is defeating the Chimera ants. They have some ulterior motives for fighting in this conflict, which is to get Kite back. And Pito actually promises to get Kite back for Gon and Kalua. And I'm not going to give anything away, but remember that promise, because that promise is going to have huge implications for the future of this arc. So that's all I'm going to say in regards to that. So this was this episode, I think, was certainly better than last week's episode. Last week's episode was slow, but it didn't have nearly as much content as this episode had, even though, like I said, the plot progression is kind of crawling along. So this was your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga. Just brought you another video with no frills, just the analysis. Peace and have a blessed day.